Well, welcome. I'm super happy to be here representing the tools investment side of things. We did reach out to some other tools investors. They just don't happen to be here. There are others, turns out, and we're pleased about that. But let's start with some introductions. Meg, you can kick us off.
Sure, I'll be very brief. Meg Wood, Managing Director for NYBC Ventures. We're a single LP venture fund, and we invest in the blood and cell space.
Hi everyone, Matt Symes. I'm an investor with Dellen Ventures. We are a UK-based early stage biotech and life sciences investor, very much focused recently on cell and gene therapies, both in the tool space and in therapeutics. So we do both.
And I'm Lee Buckler. Many of you might know me through my roles with Blood Centers of America or Advanced Therapies Think Tank, but I'm here today as co-founder of something we call Altius BioVentures, which is a bioventure sandbox of taking equity positions in early stage companies and or building companies with exclusive focus on cell and gene therapy tools, with I think an even more heavily focused on particularly on analytics.
I didn't know that.
You learn something every day. We talked a little bit more about it, but I think you both represent, obviously, the unique stratosphere of being tools investors. But I think one of the things that we're seeing more of, at least from my perspective, it seems the lines between VC and private equity and royalty stream investors and strategic investors are blurring a lot. They're acting like each other in some ways, and you two, it seems, are blurring the line between being sort of this hyper focus of investment. Both of you, if I'm not mistaken, invest in both therapeutics and tools.
Correct.
Can you talk about kind of the way that you've developed that hypothesis and what that means in terms of the way you act?
Well, the reason we invest in both is because of the necessity. I think we've all heard about scaling issues in the cell therapy space. So to have a successful therapeutic, you need successful tools. And I think we all recognize that we're working off antiquated systems and processes. And with the advent of AI at all of the advancements that have been occurring, I think now is a really good time for tools companies in particular. And I think also now, with the proof being what it is, that cell therapy works undeniably, there's a business model issue. There's great need out there for those improvements. So that is why we justify our odds split.
That was a very nice segue from the previous talk, Lee, firstly. So I would say it's very similar to what you said, but just to add to it, that I don't think you can invest in therapeutics and cell therapy without really going deep into the tools, without going to understand the CMC. That's really critical to the success of a cell therapy. So if you're going to be a therapeutic asset investor, you do have to understand the tools, you have to understand the tech, and then you're going to find the opportunities. So it makes sense, I think, if you are investing in the space, you should be looking at both. Otherwise, I don't think you can understand either particularly well.
So the next logical question, then, it seems to me, is you would want to invest in those tools which are particularly critical to your therapeutic plays, but then you've double-stacked your risk. So do you like that? Do you like investing in the tools that are critical to your therapeutic investments, or do you, in fact, like to purposefully not stack your risk in that way and invest in other things which are maybe critical to other therapeutics?
You're making investors sound very well thought out, Lee. Not the case always, but I think, what really matters in the tool space, and one of the problems, therefore one of the challenges, is the stickiness factor. Once you're stuck, you're stuck. And, that is inclusive of all the commercial products today. So I think where we look for advantage in the tools space is really conceptualizing what the potential install base is, and I use that term sort of loosely. Whether it be for our portfolio companies or not is not necessarily a consideration, but I think it's a rising sea all ships scenario where there's improved tools that are being accessed by early, mid, and late developers, that will have the right stickiness factor.
Yeah, I like to think that the tools we're investing in aren't particularly for one asset only and not useful for everything else. So it should be that if you're looking at a tool and you're investing in it, sure, there is a bit of a stacked risk, and it's something that we would discuss. But I definitely think that if you're analyzing the tool space in general, you should be looking at what's going to be beneficial across different cell therapies. Of course, it's not going to necessarily be for everything, but for specific cell types or specific kinds of processes, there's going to be broad applicability, hopefully.
Well, what's also interesting about our space in particular, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, is not just the therapy itself, but the location of the manufacturing. So are the companies assuming manufacturing on their own? Or are they utilizing CDMOs? So then you have a different access point that you have to be concerned about from a tools company is how are you going to pursue your market? And often tools companies have sort of a bifurcated strategy associated with that, where they're trying to acquire customers themselves, and then in addition try to acquire CDMOs who have customers who want to acquire that technology. So there's a multi-step process that I think is often misunderstood, especially for the early tools developers, if they do not have the appropriate experience in the cell and gene space. Thoughts? None? It's okay.
I mean, I guess it does beg the question, though, are you looking then at other adjacencies, like service companies or other adjacencies that are also critical to the therapeutic pipeline that you have or that you know are generally critical to the industry?
Yeah, the adjacency I'm very concerned about is apheresis especially in the cell therapy space. We could build a lot more scale in the manufacturing site, but where we are seeing limitations is actually in the draw and thaw. So that's an area that I consider to be an adjacency directly related to cell therapy that I am keeping my eye on for appropriate solutions there. That's just one.
Yeah, I think in terms of the process, I think apheresis is definitely a bottleneck. Treatment is one that is interesting, where there's going to be more outpatient treatments that's going to open that up. Reimbursement's another area. So there's a lot of adjacencies that are not necessarily investable by a tools investor per se, that are something that you should be interested in how it's going to be resolved. And then to answer your previous question, I've had a little bit of a think about it. Now, from the position of a CDMO, and I've part of what Dellen Ventures has done is we've started a early stage CDMO called Therapies, where I'm quite involved. So I've thought about it from the company's perspective, and of course, you want to have the latest tools and technology, but it's challenging to justify having all the latest tools and technology unless you can find someone
to use it.
So
right.
Yeah, it's very difficult to be in that position where you are trying to encourage people to use something that's untested.
Another adjacency that I'm excited about is related to biological variability and where AI could play a role in that. And that, I know that's not a direct tool that we think about with cell and gene. I think we always think about 3D object that can do a certain function. But where I'm really excited for AI, and I know this is generic, but this seems to be highly relevant for cell and gene, is data analytics and processing of that information right at the manufacturing floor. So that's an intriguing adjacency, which I think you have some experience with, Lee, don't you? Yeah?
Intelligence, not artificial intelligence.
Oh, sorry. Well, you are intelligent. It's not artificial.
No, I know some people who are intelligent.
Yeah, it's not artificial.
I mean, I think that's an interesting point, right? Is we think of these as stainless steel and plastics and consumables, but what we're doing in terms of this data gathering in process analytics, and then what we can do with that data, obviously, we're looking at things that are only digitized first and foremost. They have to be digital, and then start to think about kind of the in-process analytics, and then the artificial intelligence and machine learning. And it's, I think there's a lot of buzzwords, around that, a lot of hype around that. But I think this is a manufacturing, outside of the R&D sort of applications, the manufacturing applications to machine learn, I think, are very, very exciting, all right? Mm-hmm. Especially with autologous cell therapies, where adaptive manufacturing seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'll shift gears. What's the exit?
I don't know. Does anyone here know? It's terrible. I mean, I struggle with this because fundamentally it makes sense, right? Logically, it makes sense. You have these incredible therapeutic opportunities, and it's the only challenge is the manufacturing thereof. It's an engineering problem, really. It's nothing else. And I consider that to be a safer place to invest than biological risk. I think it will come, as I think we discussed on our prep call. I was willing to make a statement that I have no data backing for, but I think that when we start to see these commercial products truly become profitable and attempt at scale in a meaningful way. I mean, we're not able to treat all of the patients today with the approved therapies, and that's a little bit defeating. So I think once that starts to change and we start to see money, returning back to the system by way of these commercial products, I think we'll get re-engagement. A lot of people have just simply walked away, right? It's too hard, it's complicated, and there's no clear exit strategy. This is where funds like mine, and I assume yours too, can take a bit more risk and, follow the playbook. If we build it, they will come. But I do think we have to rely on the entire ecosystem to see that transition. It can't just be the early stage companies, just fighting it out. We really do need to see it at the top tier levels for some of that money to return back to the system, and then enthusiasm to be regained, which I'm certain it will.
I really like that. I don't want to say that hope is a strategy or optimism is a strategy, but I do agree. I think we know where the industry is today. I think we have a very good idea of where it needs to be in order for these patients to be treated at the scale that needs to happen. And the delta between that has to come from technology adoption, which has to lead to adoption of these and exits. So logically, you can follow that it will be there. It just hasn't yet. So we have to just keep going.
How much are you thinking about, assuming strategics are part of your, a big part of the exit strategy to take things to commercial scale to be able to service the commercial therapeutic sector? How much are you prepared or thinking about kind of the commercial execution, right? We're focused a lot still on how novel is the engineering and the science and and taking what we're using legacy technologies today to next gen technologies and adopting things. But at some point there's sales and marketing and business development that needs to be wrapped around these, because I think there's a lot of innovator's dilemma that, my thing is so special, people will just buy it, and it rarely happens. How much are you thinking about needing to invest in that commercial execution prior to getting the valuation you want with a strategic?
I think it's absolutely critical. As a technology company or as a technology investor, we like to focus on the technology and then think the commercial is going to solve itself. It doesn't. Spoiler alert. You have to solve the technology. You have to solve the commercial and the technology together, and they interplay a lot. So I do think you have to think about it early.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of a mind shift if you're doing therapeutic and tools investing, to remind yourself of the need for a commercial strategy that is deployable. And that is something different from the investment side, from an analytical perspective, to try to get your arms around before investing. But it is essential. It's almost as essential as looking at a therapeutic company in the cell space and understanding what their CMC play is, right? I mean, it's very similar to that, where, execution is dependent on manufacturing in that case. Here, it's dependent on successful sales strategy. I've only become more familiar with the chief commercial officer role and how critical that is, because it's not something that I typically see within an early stage therapeutics company, but it does matter. And I think that there's also a global dependency here as well. I mean, I tend to be US centric, sorry, Canada, thinking about commercial side, but I do think that there has to be an international consideration given as well. Even as early as you may be, I think having your arms around how you will deploy internationally is equally as important.
Super happy to take questions from the audience. If you want to start queuing up, I can just ask questions all day, but happy to have you queue up with the mic, and I'll try and keep an eye out. There's one over here. And while you're racing to the to that question, let me ask you a quick one. Actually, no, I'll leave that. It's too juicy. I'll leave it till
Controversial.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks very much. Michael Maguire, CEO of Vectus. How's the panel thinking about tools in the context of in vivo CAR?
It's changed my thinking slightly, but I think there's probably still time on the clock for a tools company, depending on the stage, to be additive to the ex vivo play. There's still a lot of commercial big pharma out there with products in their pipeline that will need to solve for scale and cost. So I still think there's some remaining runway here, and we don't know yet. Right? I wish we did, but we don't actually know yet. It seems incredibly promising, and given all the acquisition activity, it's hard to believe it won't work. But I think we can all just continue on with our ex vivo stories for now until the data is there to prove it out. But from the tools side, I think there is some applicability in some parts of the tools development space for ex vivo as compared to the in vivo. It's minimal, though.
Just to say, I think the in vivo is it's adding to our space, right? I don't think it's taking away from the ex vivo space. It's bringing capital to the space. It's bringing research. I think a lot of the developments happening on vector design, etc., will influence the way that ex vivo is done as well. So I don't think you can necessarily, as Meg said, there's pressure being put on, which is not necessarily a bad thing, and I think that it's bringing capital to the space as well.
I agree. I like that view. It's additive of ex vivo. I think it makes me look more at applications for vector production. That I think becomes much more interesting, optimizing vector and vector production. And it also makes me think more about diagnostics. Because what's happening in vivo becomes incredibly important, right? And so we can use diagnostic tools. I think we are going to become overweighted, important for in vivo.
You mean like an autoimmune diagnostic?
Any kind of diagnostic that tells me what's happening post-infusion.
Oh, I see. Sort of like the QC.
Right.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Michael.
Sorry, a question out here?
Yes. Does it work?
Yeah.
Okay. Michael Redman, Green Jay Therapeutics. Excuse me. Meg, you made this statement earlier.
No, never quote me. That is a mistake.
I wrote it down. You say there are safer places to invest. So can you and the panel elaborate?
I'm not elaborating on that. It was not my statement.
Safer places than tools. I don't remember what I said. I'm so sorry. Did I say safer places than tools? Is that what I said? Safer places. Yeah. Well, right now it's in vivo. I mean, those are all getting bought up. So that feels like a safer place to invest than a tools company. But I mean, everything is a trend in investing, seemingly. So one can't predict. But I hear the tech is doing really well.
I can't defend what Meg is.
No, never quote me. I should have started with that. Sorry.
I think it's important. It's always important to remember that, especially when you're using other people's money, we're not just competing with other cell and gene therapy investment opportunities. We're competing with GLP-1s and bites and tech and AI, right?
Ignacio Willits, co-founder of Mitos. Question about market timing for tools. So when do you interested to hear your thoughts on optimal timing for tools companies to move into these new modalities that are coming through? Is it the earliest stages where you can enter into the manufacturing processes pre-IND or between rounds, or once there are approved blockbusters out there?
Trying to think about how to answer this. I think if your strategy as a tool is going into specifically one space and that space isn't proven, obviously there's risk there. You also don't want to wait too long, obviously, until there's a market standard and you have to displace that. I do think that there's a lot of value in getting into a lot of early programs, whether that's getting into academic centers, et cetera. And if you can do that in a way that's not committing your entire company strategy to a modality that doesn't have any proof behind it, obviously that would be ideal. I don't think cell therapy is in that space, even in vivo, because it's based on a lot of stuff that we already know. But yeah, I would say as early as possible. But just obviously, if you're going to be at the risk of that industry, how it goes.
I think what's interesting is cell and gene therapy, kind of broke the paradigm for tools investment, because in drug development, you typically had at least a decade as things wound their way through phase 1 and 2 and 3, and the trials got larger and larger, and the manufacturing became more and more standardized. The tools investors had this window to sort of invest in, the kinds of technologies that were going to be required for commercial production. And these therapies went from, a small pilot to phase 2 to approval. And so we're stuck with these legacy technologies that aren't fit for purpose, with commercial products. And so we're now backtracking, trying to retrofit our tools to fit the commercials, what are already commercial products that might otherwise be only sort of in midway development.
That's an interesting perspective. I kind of always thought about it slightly, well, it's the same but different, is that in the standard tools investing ecosystem, you're investing in a tool that was invented 10 years ago, solving for a problem that existed 10 years ago. So I think that your positive reflection on that is an interesting point. In the tool space for cell and gene, you're right. I mean, it's all sort of reactive, right? It's not proactive, and I don't think we've moved to a proactive stance yet.
Yeah. Okay, I'll ask my juicy question while the mic is running around. Speaking of proactive investment, if you had the opportunity to proactively invest toward a future that you imagine cell and gene therapy is marching toward, what does that look like for you? What future are we marching toward that you think it's important to develop tools for today?
I'll take this one first. So I think I've said to you before that I think we need to move towards a world where one of the first things I was ever told when I got into cell and gene therapy was that the process is the product. And I think we need to move towards a world where that's no longer the case, where the product is the product. And you use whatever tools and whatever process is best to be able to get that product. And what that means is we need to be much better at characterizing the product. We need to understand and we just need to have a longer history of understanding how these are done and how patients react to it over long periods, depending on what data you've gathered in the manufacturing process. So I think if we can build a very data-driven understanding of what these products actually are, and we can move away from thinking you have to follow the exact same process to get to the exact same stage, I think that'll be better for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and my sort of vision for the future is, bedside manufacturing / bedside administration, sort of in a seamless continuum, which now that I'm thinking about it is in vivo. So perhaps I should modify my vision a bit, because I do agree that there is a place for both. But I do think that there will be automation end to end, helping add to that scalability challenge that exists. COGS reduction, absolutely. And I think less variability of the product in versus the product out capabilities. I think that will become more streamlined. That's the world that I'm building through my investment in the tools space. And I think it's attainable. Aspirationally, in 30 years from now, I'm not that smart. I don't have AI to determine that. I just have I.
I think to answer my own question, I think it's going to look a lot more like blood than it does cell and gene therapy today. I think there's going to be a lot less bunny suits, a lot less clean rooms, and a lot more closed systems that are operating in much lower class environments, right? And I think as you think that through, then that has implications on kind of all the, on the skilled labor you require, the infrastructure you require, whether it's centralized or decentralized, and then the way that you can monitor quality control in those kind of environments. So, any more questions from the audience? One over here, center of the room.
Bright lights, can't see.
Oh, now we're getting a really intelligent question. This is scary.
Yeah, great discussion there. So Adam Inch from Lente Tech. I guess as a tools developer, how would you advise me on managing the conflict between commercialization, early commercialization, and actually developing the platform further?
And actually, what? I didn't catch the last part.
So, and developing the platform more, doing more development on the platform.
So push to an early commercial launch versus continue to refine and perfect the technology before commercial launch. Is that the question?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
I'm just an investor, not an operator, so I hate to give you bad advice, but just armchairing here. I do think there's a benefit in V1, V2. It has to be clear and stated, and especially around the changes you're going to iterate on. I think I'm not going to be, I think the EU is more favorable for V1 to V2 iterations, especially in the academic hospital settings. So depending on the particular technology, accessing more less sensitive environments as you think about deployment could be an option as you start to build out the V2 package. If there's regulatory risk, don't do it. Go for V2 directly.
Not much to add, except I would say as much as the regulation allows, I think you need to get your technology out there and get feedback on it and see if there's demand for it as soon as possible. I think the bias of biotech is to stay in your lab as long as possible and just hide from the world. And I think we need to fight that.
Please join me in thanking Meg and Matt, and thank you for participating in the discussion.